Brought to you in association with Grendel Press. This is Werewolf the Podcast, a serial killer drama.
Your mama is a werewolf with long sharp teeth. I'm up all night when the world should sleep. I curse the darkness when it's killing time.
I don't think Simon de Montfort realised that I needed no one to tell me who the fuck had done what they'd done. I knew well enough that an 8,000-year-old blood goddess and her son had burnt my house down. I don't think that sentence has ever been said before. Yes, you might gather that they were, fucking vampires. I closed the gap between us, me and Simon, in the blink of an eye, and had the man in my hand as I gently lifted him from the floor and crushed his windpipe. Oh, it felt so good to squeeze, to crush and kill. I love it. He came here thinking that he would talk me into, well, whatever he was gonna try and talk me into, and I just killed the posh git. I would love to know what he was feeling as I brought my fingers together somewhat playfully around his neck. I teased the carotid arteries, slowly shutting them down. His mind would be gradually robbed of oxygen until it switched off. I gathered he had a great mind, a special mind. Now it was going to be no mind, as his face slowly turned purple with the pressure I applied with my pinkies. I'd been close to death many times. Well, probably actually properly dead once or twice, but this fucker would die from being overconfident and self-important and being here. That's actually a bit unfair reasoning, I suppose. I'd probably almost died many times from being overconfident and being overly self-important myself. The thing Simon had done wrong was just be here now. Not all those things went together at one time. I enjoyed this so much. I just enjoyed killing. I was doing something that could not be fixed. Breaking things that cannot be fixed gave incredible power to my ego. I think it made me understand the value of rarity and uniqueness. I had lost much in that fire, and now the world would lose something unique in return. A sort of werewolf karma, if you believe in that type of bullshit. I lifted him to an arm's length, stared into those dying eyes, and prepared to give him the last words he would ever hear with a happy and vitriolic heart. What I did not expect was the way those eyes looked back at me. The man's gaze showed no fear, no distress or pain. He kind of hung utterly relaxed. He wasn't kicking his feet or fighting my hands away, as if this was just a thing that happens now and again. Simon was in a lifted permanent shrug at the end of my grasp. He really looked very disappointed in me. In fact, he seemed annoyed maybe. So I thought a small monologue was required to him, impart the fear and just show him how fucked he really was. It would normally do the trick at this point. It may help him realise that he was going to die. So I prepared my voice for a fear-filling oratory. I don't need your help. I know who did it, and I know I'll kill him. I'm sorry, but you just fucked up, I told him as I shook him and felt the pure, full body rush of excitement as his pulse stopped at the pressure of my fingers, and he was not there. He wasn't. No, I don't mean he was dead. He was just wasn't there. My hand shot into the air at the loss of the weight it supported, and I stumbled forward while looking around for any evidence of what I hoped would be a body. He was just gone. Was he like a ghost or something? Maybe he was a holographic projection. I knew they'd been working on that kind of shit in the government, and then confusingly from behind me came his voice.
Sorry, old son, that just won't do.
the man said with a hint of smugness.
I don't die, I'm afraid. I cannot say that better than you've tried before, because I don't think that to be the case. But I don't die.
Fury kind of smote me, and it took every ounce of Fenn's will not to transform into my monster me. I turned to look at him. He'd robbed me of my pleasure by just not dying. Well, this was confusing. In my head, I communicated with Fenn. It reminded me of the feeling I had as a toddler when someone had took my favourite toy away. I would have killed them if I could, and as the listeners to this podcast know, I had done in the past. My first kill happening at 2 years of age. Okay, any clues on what to do to put this fucker down? I mentally asked Fenn. Fenn was sitting watching like a spectator at a tennis match. He was looking left, then right, then left, looking at me for a moment, then looking at Simon and then me. No, it's 40 love to him, he replied, laughing. I've not got a fucking clue what he is. It is. We both felt a bit better when Simon started an explanation, because like all the best buddies, the man began to explain what, why, and who he was. I don't know really why they do this shit, and they always do. Do they not realise that they should just kill the hero, me in this case, and then it would be over? As he spoke, I was trying to figure out how he would attack me. What did he have as a weapon? What was he doing? Then I realised, nope, he was just going to talk. The worst attack of all for me. He was going to bore me to fucking death.
Yes, I'm the original 7th Earl of Leicester, over 800 years old now.
He started pacing back and forth with his hands held behind his back. He was going into full monologue or soliloquy. Here we fucking go.
I was sent off on a crusade, you see. Holy Land and all that. You know the story. Killing for Christ and all that tosh.
He really was enjoying himself now.
Turns out I was one of the 7 knights who found the Grail.
He paused in front of me for a moment. I think he expected me to have some kind of reaction to this, something like wow, or other words along those same lines. I think he took this unsympathetic silence of mine as a reason to continue. I think he saw this lack of caring as, well, I suppose a lack of knowledge.
You know, the Holy Grail, the cup of Christ,
he exclaimed. Yeah, was the patronising cheer that flashed into my brain from Fenn. I was tensing again to kill. I think he thought that I still did not get the Holy Grail thing, and with his exasperation at my lack of knowledge, he just fucking continued.
To be succinct, which is what I understand you appreciate, I drank from it. And now? Well, now has seemed to become forever.
Then he smirked. See, that was the wrong thing to do. I couldn't hold back the colossal cunt inside me any longer. I again grabbed the man, lifting him bodily off the floor and smashing his head on the rough concrete edge of the canal. I got 2 good bashes, and then the pulpy, lump-headed body just fucking vanished again from my hand. God, this was annoying. I was now kneeling, shaking my head over a big patch of empty fuck all.
I gather you didn't believe me.
He more than smugly said from behind me. This was crazy, but it was actually some kind of awkward fun, so I literally laughed out loud. No, I believed you. I just had to check, I told him with a little disappointing note offered in my voice. I thought for a moment, and then smiling, I rose to my feet and kind of waved in a conciliatory manner. I was offering my defeat, my resignation. Okay then, I'm listening, go ahead.
You have a huge issue, Will. Up above us in the sky are 2 circling AC-130s. Now, with your prior training and work, I know you comprehend what that means. Simply put, there's enough firepower in the sky to remove the life from a good few miles of Manchester. I don't think even a creature like yourself could survive that level of devastation. They have, for goodness sake, mobilized an aircraft carrier in case they need to hit you with fucking airstrikes, Will.
That was bullshit. Obviously. Oh, it's obviously bullshit. Oh, shit. But I really now was listening. An aircraft carrier? Gunships? Seemed a little irresponsible of the powers that be. Gosh, weren't they making a great effort for little tiny me, which I must admit gave me a warm dopamine trickle as a reward and a warm trickle from somewhere else. He laughed a little as he caught me looking at the sky, as though, I'd be able to spot the gigantic gunships circling. I looked back at the man, trying to judge whether or not he had to be fucking lying. He was trying to save his own, but he didn't need his life saving. I don't understand why what? Oh, fucking hell. Okay.
The governments of the United States and about half the European nations have been brought into dealing with you. They have special forces from Norway here. The British and American special forces have eyes on you right now and are waiting to see what happens with this conversation, to see what they have to do. Basically, Will, you are fucked. And fucked is not a word that I usually fall low enough to use, but in this case I think you need to realise the truth, and being fucked is a great way of explaining it. They are willing to bomb Manchester, to kill you, if necessary.
He was now standing in front of me doing everything from the convincing body language book he could. His arms were wide open and he was facing me. I must have looked a little funny myself as I felt myself standing open-mouthed in a state of, discombobulation. Not a state I'm very used to. This had to be fucking utter bollocks. It had to be. I was waiting for Fen to help me out with this. The giant wolf soul padded up to me from the shadows and stood there. Nothing came from the centuries-old mind. He was as confused as I was. I could feel it. He looked at me and then back at the guy. I know what you're waiting for me to offer here, some advice, Will, but to be honest, I really don't. And then he nodded at the man. He has to be talking shite. Why would they have brought all that shite for you? Don't get me wrong, you've done some proper horrible shit, but £100 million airstrike and a massive innocent death toll seems a little overkill for what we've done. There has to be a lot more to this than just riding on this one, Will, he explained. I was trying to process what had been said. You could tell that Simon had been highly trained or had some vast amount of experience in this kind of thing, because he didn't interrupt those thoughts. He simply stood maintaining an open-handed posture while I reflected on what had been said. He looked kind of Christ-like, with the smoke wafting now over from the opposite bank after the death of the fires. I just couldn't fathom out this level of response to me killing a couple of fish folk and bullying some little police people. Maybe I'd done so much over the years and this was the final reckoning. Fuck. I'd pushed too hard and far too hard. Seemed that could be the case. Human karma. Nah, that's bollocks, isn't it? That's for losers. Okay then. If what you said is true, why so much stuff to deal with me? I asked. Thank fuck he'd still taken on that bad guy role in the movie. He had no choice to share his narrative with me. He would need me to know the reason for all of it instead of just saying...
Because
which, to be honest, is what I would have done.
Well, it turns out that the people who run the world...
He said. What, like the governments? I asked, and he kind of laughed in response.
Somewhat of a naive response from a man with an IQ as high as yours, if you think that governments are running this world.
This was noted by me as being very patronising. I was a simplistic soul at heart when it came to world politics. I knew it happened, and I just fucking ignored it.
Sorry.
He genuinely apologised.
I'm under a lot of stress at the moment, so that was unkind and unconsidered as a response. Although, you have tried to kill me twice, so I think I can be a little hasty and harsh with my words.
He said. I really appreciated it. I had a lot more respect for the man at this point. He seemed legit. He seemed calm and reflective. Must be his age, I suppose.
I act as though I know who's running things.
He said. I could see the internal self-reflection in his statement.
Let's just say, whoever or whatever runs things wants something you have.
I kind of stared blankly at him. I had no idea what that thing could be. I think he assumed that I knew. I scratched my nose and shook my head while shrugging my shoulders. He got the idea, and he paused and shook his head with disappointment while breaking eye contact. Yeah, again, he looked disappointed in me. I felt a little bit hurt by his response, actually, which was a bit weird.
They believe you have a method of killing the werewolf soul element of the mutualistic pair you guys make. No, that's untrue. We know you have a magic spell or a ritual or whatever, a method of killing a werewolf soul. And you do, don't you?
He paused. I think he expected me to start talking there, but I wasn't ready. I was still trying to get myself together. His manner was changing. I could see he was getting a little infuriated with me now. His calm exterior was falling away a little.
For goodness sake, Will, the sky is full of death and a noose of massive magnitude is quickly closing about you. You need to realise that we are not fooling about this time. Please understand that. And I hope you're being purposefully difficult because you cannot actually not understand what's been said.
He stopped and laughed.
Wow, you have managed to reduce me to double negative sentences. I must really be quite flustered. But the fact is, we know that you stole the spell from the Welsh Library a little while ago, and that is what we want.
They want a magic spell? I laughed. And willing to cause all this level of collateral damage for a magic spell to kill werewolves?
Yes.
He nodded like a proud dog owner as his dog sat on command. My laughter faded. I felt Fen now tense. His discomfort at this information was much more apparent than mine.
They want it,
Simon began, but I'd got a mental grasp of the situation now. They want it because they would then have, I suppose, massive leverage over the Russian pack. I'm not as stupid as you think. I know how powerful the wolves of Russia are, I said dismissively. It was the pack that sent me to get it. No one sends me to do anything, so I kept the spell, and it works. I know I tried it. The pack is down one werewolf, and to be honest, they've backed off and they leave me well alone now. I must admit I enjoy having this much power over that bunch of dull bastards. The professor smiled and nodded. I could sense he was quietly impressed with my understanding now that I had caught up eventually.
Yes. Yes, very good.
He was not being patronising, he was actually kind of offering genuine praise.
And obviously, they don't want that leverage to get into the wrong hands. They know that Putin, for instance, is held in check by the wolves. Giving him this spell would be giving him the key to the eastern economic resources of Russia. so Gut is the most important city on that side of the continent, so this would be very bad.
He told me, enjoying the fact that we had seemed to strike some kind of accord. Fen and I, in response, well, we started to laugh. The man looked confused and really angry. He dragged off his hat and straightened it all out before ramming it angrily on his head and folding his arms like a child protectively across his chest. It's all right. You're telling me that you're worried that Putin will kill all the werewolves and take over Surgut and the balance of power in Russia will be out? Oh, I can definitely see why that would be bad. I really can, I told him, wiping the tears from my eyes. Fen was still chuckling away. Please tell him. Again, I burst into laughter, looking incredulously at the man.
Look, Will, this might seem funny and unimportant to you. I know you don't care about death and destruction. I know you actually kind of enjoy that type of thing. But this is serious. This is a very important, weighty conversation. Its results will lead to whether or not you end up as a red smear on the side of the canal or not.
He seemed actually kind of genuinely concerned for my health. He looked extraordinarily earnest, which set me and Fen, well, I was laughing again. I even developed snorty hiccups because I was laughing that hard. The more the man fumed, the worse it got, until I got to a point where I just had to get a grip. I'm not laughing at this. Sorry, I'm not laughing at the serious nature of the situation. Are you? I promise. Oh, it sounds like a set of dire circumstances, doesn't it? But hey, what do I don't really want to be a red smear, but you do know you've got Putin all wrong, don't you? His face took on a look of confusion at this information.
What do you mean?
He asked. I laughed again. You're serious? You don't know, do you? This is fucking hilarious. You guys with your satellites and your spies and all that intelligence gathering shit, we're going to murder people in one of their own country cities because of a lack of knowing things. That's fucking brilliant. This is, honestly, it's one of the best things that's ever happened. I was now laughing so hard I had to physically sit down. The man was very patient. He waited. He knew this was going to be something important, and I had to slowly get myself under control. And eventually, sitting up and wiping my eyes, I looked at Simon. Putin? Sorry. Putin's a werewolf, mate. I told him and then burst into laughter again. Simon was looking all sorts of confused, and then I could see what I'd just said actually sunk in.
Ah, I see.
He said.
That changes everything then. Well, it may complicate things, but I think they'll still want to debrief you and get that information from you personally.
Ah, you see, that's where the problem lies. I don't think that's very likely, I'm afraid. I have to be leaving. I'm sorry. I've just got a huge pile of revenge killings to do, as well as shitloads of collateral damage. Please, Simon, don't think I'm being rude. I will endeavour to get around to dealing with you in person soon, once I work out how to deal with you. He smiled and nodded. One of the reasons I decided to live here, in this warehouse, was that it gave me all sorts of manners of escape. I'm going to risk leaving and making a run for it. We'll see what swoops down and tries to kill me. Let's see how much fun this is really going to be. I gave a perfect parade ground salute before starting to march away. In 3 strides, I'd transformed into my wolf form and was in full sprints for the canal tunnel ahead of me. This would get me undercover and under the roads and shelter me from the death above. The drones the MOD used were too large to follow. If the special forces were waiting there, well, that would be a distraction. It could only really go two ways, couldn't it? I would win, or they would win, but with massive casualties. As I ran, the concrete curb beside me exploded, followed by the sound of a shot. That showed me that I was under fire. I smiled. This would be a close-run thing. They had to get their eye in at this long range. I would maybe get away with another shot if I ran at this pace. Then they would be set. This was so much fun. I'd lost everything tonight, but there was always good that came from the bad. Now I literally had nothing to lose. I was that injured animal that they warn you about as being the most dangerous. Nothing mattered anymore. Nothing.
The Professor. As the first shot rang out, I did not do the sensible thing of hitting the ground. It wasn't really necessary, as you know. I'm immortal. I watched the man's form turn into a cloud of dark smoke and then solidify as a massive wolf that raced into the distance. The reality of the night broke into the moment now. Running and shouting took over as people appeared from every direction all at once. Spotlights, guns, and yelling. I was in fits of laughter at this point. All that humanity could throw at the wolf was effectively being thrown at him now, and he'd just run off. All that technology and modern thinking, all those hours of strategizing and thought, that firepower and the will to use it, well, they were all useless. That was a special being that had just bolted into the night. His black pelt had made him almost invisible in the dark. I looked at the response that had responded to him. Hundreds of milling people. They seemed ridiculous. Will was of a different class. He was how do I even describe him? A horrendous... no, that's not enough. He was horrible. No, it needs to be more guttural, doesn't it? Hang on. He was a cunt. No, even that's not enough. He was the king of cunts. And that made me smile. I thought the shot that rang out had clipped him, but he continued to go as another high-powered rifle crack was heard. I was standing, laughing wholeheartedly now. People must have thought I'd completely lost it. But that wasn't the case. It was just so amusing. Two large, muscular men shouted at me to get down, then suddenly bundled me to the ground for what they thought was my own safety. But I'd be billing them for the damage to my Oxford brogues as I was harshly dragged downwards. Eventually the all-clear was given, and the bodies pinning me down lifted themselves with considerable apologies being given. I tried to smile and be gracious, but it was difficult. "Did they get him?" I asked one of the burly soldiers. He stuck a finger to his ear and asked whether the target had been acquired. "Negative," was the reply. I smiled. This was now getting interesting. It had been a century or so since I'd been given such a challenge. The wolf had won the first engagement, and I now got the thorough enjoyment of telling the bigwigs what Putin was, and the excitement of a worthwhile adversary.
Well, thank you for listening once again, dear listener. If you're listening, if you're not listening, then you didn't hear this, so there's no need to thank you for anything really, because you didn't do anything. But if you did, then thank you. Could you click on the download, and if you could share and do all that kind of stuff, that would be great. There's the Facebook group, which is full of fun people, and you can find it in the description below, as well as some fiction literature and some non-fiction literature and loads of great work from great authors. You can join me on Twitter and Instagram and all those different kind of social media things if you want, and you can also support the show by either subscribing to it or just buying me a coffee, or Greg a coffee, or whoever's wonderful enough to be on the show. Yeah, thanks for listening. You're very much appreciated. And as always, I love you.
Your mama is a werewolf with long sharp teeth. I'm up all night when the world should sleep. I curse the darkness when it's killing time. I got a river of fear running through my mind.
Brought to you in association with Grendel Press. This is Werewolf the Podcast, a serial killer drama.